Hey guys, tonight we're setting sail on another cozy adventure here on Sleepy Histories, where we peel back the mossy curtains of the past and find out just how weird, wonderful, and wildly uncomfortable history really was. Picture this. You're standing on a splintery wooden dock somewhere in the chilly north of Europe over 1,000 years ago. The sky is a brooding sheet of iron. Seagulls scream overhead like tiny feathered demons, and below your feet, well, it's slick with old fish guts and yesterday's rain. Lucky you. You're about to climb aboard a Viking longship. Yes, one of those sleek, dragon-headed beauties that slices through the sea like a knife through cold butter. Only up close it doesn't smell quite as heroic. Think salted fish, damp wool, and a hint of sweaty armpit for good measure. And guess what? You're not just here to wave at burly blondes from the safety of a museum exhibit. No, tonight you're one of them, crammed elbow to elbow with dozens of hungry, half-drunk warriors on a voyage that could last weeks or even months. By the way, small reality check. You probably wouldn't survive the first day. Between the gut-churning food, the sea that tries to swallow you whole every afternoon, and the delightful company of lice, you'd be begging to go home before the sun even sets. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. I'd love seeing the little constellation of you all popping up from around the world. It's like our own secret Viking map, minus the pillaging. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on the edge of a weather-beaten dock, somewhere in the cold reaches of Scandinavia. It might be Norway, might be Denmark. Frankly, the locals couldn't care less about borders, the way modern maps obsess over them. Here, it's all about which chieftain's name carries weight, whose halls throw the best feasts, and whether the sea gods are in a charitable mood this season. The air is sharp enough to slice open your nose. You taste salt and smoke every time you breathe in. Beneath your feet, the planks of the dock are soaked dark from last night's rain, soft in places, splintered in others, and studded with iron nails that glint like tiny malicious eyes. There's a tang of rotting seaweed drifting up from under the pilings, mingling with the richer, more stomach-turning stench of old fish guts that were half-heartedly rinsed into the tide. Everywhere around you is motion. Men in wool tunics and leather boots, shoulders broad from years of hauling nets or swinging axes, are bustling up and down the dock, shouting over each other in harsh, musical syllables. Some are ferrying barrels banded with rust-streaked iron barrels that slosh in a way that tells you they're definitely not full of sweet wine. Others lug nets crusted with dried algae, or bundles of oars still sticky with pitch. There's a handful of women here too, their hair twisted into tight braids under rough woolen shawls. One cradles a sleepy toddler on her hip. Another stoops to wipe snot off a boy's upper lip with the corner of her apron. You catch the quick flash of grief on her face as she stands back up, just a brief tightening of her jaw, and it strikes you that some of these men might not be coming back. Beyond the dock, the village huddles like a clutch of frightened hens under the low gray sky. The longhouses are built of dark timber, thatched roofs heavy with last week's rain. Smoke snakes up from stone hearths, carrying with it the ghostly scent of charred goat fat and birch bark. Somewhere, a dog is barking its head off, while a gaggle of children chase each other around a pile of discarded eel traps, squealing with the kind of shrill delight that can slice right through a man's headache. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, feeling your soles stick a little to the slimy wood. Your breath puffs out in tiny clouds. The cold is doing its level best to chew through your cloak, your tunic, and probably your very will to live. You'd kill for a steaming mug of something, mulled ale, hot broth, or honestly even just warm dishwater at this point. Someone jostles you from behind. You look up to find a stocky man with a beard that's more salt than pepper, wearing a battered bronze brooch shaped like a snarling beast's head. He flashes you a grin that's only partially ruined by the dark gap where two of his front teeth should be. "First time going out," he rumbles, in an accent so thick it seems woven from peat. You nod, because what else are you going to do? Confess that you're actually from the 21st century and got here by the miracle of an overly imaginative sleep podcast. The man's grin widens, becoming both more alarming and strangely comforting. "Keep your feet under you when you climb aboard. Last spring we lost a boy over the side, boots caught on a mooring line, straight into the drink. Water's cold enough to steal your breath before you can curse the gods. Found him 2 days later, washed up on the stones. Fish had got to him, hardly needed a pyre." He says all this like he's describing the weather. Then he claps you on the shoulder, hard enough to nearly stagger you into the tide, and trudges off with a sack of iron rivets slung over his back. You take a steadying breath. Try not to look at the slick green ropes of kelp draped across the dock pilings like the entrails of some giant sea creature. Try not to think about bodies nibbled by fish. Instead, your gaze drifts out to where the Longship is tied up, bobbing gently against its fenders. It's a magnificent beast, even if it smells faintly of bilge and last week's sweat, long and lean, carved from overlapping planks of oak, sealed tight with wool caulking and pine tar that oozes like dark honey between the seams. The prow rises high, curling into the fierce head of a dragon or serpent, hard to tell exactly which in the dim light, but either way, it's meant to terrify. Imagine being a poor monk on some foggy English coast, looking up from your modest prayers, just in time to see that snarling figurehead slicing through the mist. Bet you'd drop your incense burner and run screaming for the nearest pile of sheep. Ropes run from the mast to the gunwales, taut and humming in the salt breeze. The sail is furled for now, thick wool, dyed a rusty red, that once might have been bright as blood, now weathered by countless storms. Shield racks line the sides of the ship, wooden discs painted with snarling wolves, black suns, twisted knotwork. Each one has dents, scars, and in some places, faint stains that might be old blood or just spilled ale. Hard to say. Men clamber across the deck, securing cargo, testing the tension on ropes. A pair are hunched over what looks like a barrel that's been converted into a makeshift coop, peering in and arguing about whether the scrawny hen inside will last the trip without keeling over dead. Closer by, a skinny lad with a pockmarked face is dragging a wicker basket full of hard-baked bread loaves. You recognize them from earlier. Each loaf is roughly the size and texture of a paving stone. He pauses to pick at something under his tunic, makes a sour face, then keeps moving. Fleas, you guess, or lice, or both. Your stomach gives a little twist. Are you sure you signed up for this? But before you can reconsider, or perhaps bolt for the safety of those smoke-choked longhouses, someone starts bellowing orders in a voice like a splitting log. A few older warriors pick up war horns and blow out low, haunting calls that seem to vibrate right through your ribs. A sort of hush falls over the dock. Wives and children step back, drawing shawls tighter, some whispering quick prayers to the gods. You catch a murmur of Phrygia, keep him safe, and Thor, watch over their oars. A mother kisses the top of her boy's head, leaving a faint smear of tears in his hair. The crew begins to file aboard in earnest now, clomping up the gangplank, jostling each other for favored spots near the mast or away from the bilge. You're swept up in their momentum before you can protest, stumbling a little on the slick wood, heart hammering as the dragon's head looms ever larger. You pause at the top of the plank, just long enough to look back. The village seems impossibly small now, crouched on the edge of a dark, endless sea. Smoke from the hearths curls into the sky, then vanishes. Someone behind you growls, "Move it, Greenling, before I decide your ribs would make fine kindling." So you step aboard, feeling the ship settle a little under your weight, boards creaking like they might complain. You grip the nearest railing, smooth from generations of hands, sticky with pine tar. The cold hits your lungs again, hard and sharp. The wind tastes like salt and possibility, and something darker, older. And just like that, you're no longer a bystander. You're a crewman, another would-be raider, merchant, wanderer, whatever story the fates have written in the waves. Your heart gives one last nervous flutter. Then the world shifts as the Longship shoves off from the dock, oars dipping into the dark water, in near-perfect unison. The journey has begun, whether you're truly ready or not. You're still clutching the railing when someone behind you gives you a none too gentle shove that nearly sends you sprawling into a heap of ropes and sleeping furs. A few gruff laughs rise up around you. Turns out your near wipeout is the evening's entertainment, but no one lingers on the joke for long. There's too much to do. Your eyes dart around, trying to get your bearings on this narrow, crowded vessel. The Longship feels both larger and smaller than you expected. Larger, because when you stand amidships and look fore and aft, the dragon prow seems a long march away, and the stern with its broad steering oar feels like a distant cousin. Smaller, because there's barely room to swing a stick without thwacking someone's ear. Everywhere you look, there's controlled chaos. A knot of men are wrestling with the sail ropes, pulling them through hand-worn pulleys, their arms tensed into ropes of muscle. Nearby, two young lads with downy fuzz on their upper lips squat by a chest brimming with iron nails and replacement rivets, sorting them like squirrels fussing over acorns. A dark-haired giant with a scar that cuts through one eyebrow sits on an overturned bucket, carefully oiling the blade of a heavy axe that looks like it could cleave a cow in half. You edge past a heap of coiled ropes and nearly step into an open cask. You catch yourself just in time and peer inside, only to gag slightly. It's packed with brined herring, staring back at you with glassy eyes. The salt tang is enough to make your own eyes water. Above all this, the smell of pine tar is overwhelming. It oozes between the hull planks, smeared thick around seams and joins, making the air heavy and slightly sweet, almost cloying. It's a smell you'll carry in your hair and cloak for days, maybe weeks. Quit gawking and find a seat before the master at oars finds your soft hide. Someone barks at you. You glance up to see a wiry old sailor, his beard streaked with yellow from years of smoke and mead. He jerks his thumb at a narrow wooden bench that runs the length of the ship. The benches double as rowing seats and personal territory, each man's bundle of belongings, a blanket, a spare tunic if he's lucky, maybe a few trinkets from home, is stashed beneath. You pick your way over and squeeze onto a bench between two burly specimens who barely give you room to settle. One of them gives you a once-over, then smirks. Hope you don't snore like a walrus or drool. This one here, he jerks his thumb at the other man, woke up once with half a mouthful of someone else's spit, thought he was drowning. The other man just grunts and cracks a grin, revealing several missing teeth. Wasn't the worst thing I've tasted. They both laugh, a low, conspiratorial sound that tells you despite the cramped quarters, there's a strange sort of brotherhood here, or at least an unspoken truce that makes life on the sea bearable. You glance around more closely. The bench across from you is occupied by a knot of younger rowers, some still more boys than men, faces pink with cold and excitement. They're comparing scars, real or imagined. One has a shallow slice across his palm he claims came from sparring. Another pulls down the collar of his tunic to reveal a puckered mark on his shoulder that's suspiciously round, probably from a drunk cousin biting him at a feast, though he insists it was a sword tip. One of the lads catches your eye and leans forward, eyebrows wagging. First voyage. You nod, because what else can you do? He grins. You'll learn. Keep your toes out from under the oar when we get to rowing, or you'll be limping when we raid. And if you must vomit, aim downwind. If not, we toss you in to let the whales finish the job. His friends howl with laughter. You force a chuckle, but your stomach gives a nervous flip. Farther down the ship, you notice a few small barrels wedged under benches, carefully lashed so they don't roll around and break someone's ankle. A curious tang drifts from them. Sour, earthy, cheese maybe, or salted butter already turning. Someone next to one of the barrels lifts the lid and pulls out a cloth-wrapped lump, breaks off a piece, and pops it in his mouth with a satisfied grunt. Then there's the big casks stacked toward the center, lashed tight with ropes, crisscrossing over tar-streaked planks. The crew gives these wide berth. Even the tough ones look respectful. You figure out why when a sailor lifts a plug and fills a small cup, mead or weak ale sloshes out, amber and frothy. He downs it, wipes his mouth with the back of his hand, and sighs like a man reborn. It's clear enough. This is the lifeblood of the voyage, not just because it's a treat, but because water spoils quickly in wooden barrels, turns foul, and breeds all manner of nasty things. So these men drink beer and mead, even at sunrise. Small beer, barely enough alcohol to make you stumble, but enough to kill the invisible horrors lurking in untreated water. You overhear someone joke that they're safer slightly drunk than stone cold sober, and you believe it. A sudden commotion draws your eye. Up by the mast, a tall figure in a fur-trimmed cloak stands braced against the rolling deck. The cloak is dyed a rich crimson that sets him apart, chieftain probably, or the man paying for this whole expedition. His hand rests on the hilt of a sword whose pommel is shaped like a snarling wolf. He's giving orders in a calm, level voice that nevertheless carries. Sailors and warriors alike cluster around, nodding, spitting into the sea, adjusting belts and cloaks. A hush ripples down the ship. Even your benchmates straighten up. The young ones try to look older, stiffer, as if hoping sheer posture will protect them from the worst of whatever waits beyond the fjord mouth. The chieftain finishes with a short, sharp phrase. A handful of men bellow back in unison, a booming sound that rattles through the hollow of your chest. Then the chieftain nods once, as if to say, "That's settled," and strides aft to confer with the helmsman. Your benchmates start muttering again, a few knocking their knuckles lightly against the wooden hull, a quiet plea for the Longship itself to carry them safe. One spits over the side, another touches a small amulet tied around his neck, probably Thor's hammer. The crew is falling into an unspoken rhythm now. The men on either side of you shift, plant their feet braced against low crossbeams. Hands find their oars almost by instinct. You scramble to copy them, wrapping your cold fingers around the smooth, tar-slick wood. It's heavier than you expected, solid in a way that speaks of ancient forests, felled and shaped by craftsmen who could read the grain like runes. A short, sharp whistle slices through the air, and just like that, like birds startled into flight, the oars dip as one into the dark water. The first pull nearly wrenches your shoulders out of their sockets. Your benchmate lets out a bark of laughter at your grunt. Row from the gut, not the arms. Greenling, he calls, his breath steaming. You try again. This time you lean forward, plant your boots, let your whole torso heave back as you pull. The oar blade bites deep. For a second there's resistance. Then the ship surges forward under you, an odd, exhilarating lurch that turns your fear into something else, something almost like delight. Around you, the other benches fall into their chorus. Wood creaks, muscles strain, breath hisses out in puffs. The Longship leaps forward like a hound, straining at the leash. Someone starts up a rowing chant, low and rhythmic, half song and half spell. Voices join in, merging into a rumble that fills the cold air. It's hypnotic, almost soothing. You can feel it vibrating through the bench into your bones. And just like that, you're part of it. Not a visitor, not an observer. A Viking, for better or worse, lungs burning with salt and cold, shoulders already aching. The Longship moves under you, alive in its own way, and ahead lies only open water, mystery, and 1,000 tales yet untold. It doesn't take long before your shoulders start to protest, a low burn that grows with every pull of the oar. The cold air is deceptive. It numbs your skin, but doesn't cool the muscles straining under your cloak. You sneak a look down the Longship's length and catch glimpses of others shifting on their benches, rolling their necks, grimacing. No one complains. Complaining is a good way to get saddled with double duty on night watch or earn yourself a boot in the backside from someone who thinks you're slowing the pace. Soon enough, though, the steersman at the rear shouts a curt command. One by one, the oars lift, dripping from the sea, and lay across the gunwales. You rub your hands together, grateful for the reprieve, even though your palms already sting. The Longship glides forward under the momentum you've all built, then settles into a gentle bob. The man next to you snorts and stretches his arms overhead. A fine start, he says with a crooked grin. If your arms haven't fallen off by tomorrow, we'll make a proper sea wolf of you yet. Assuming, drawls his friend across the bench, you survive what's in those barrels. He jerks his chin toward the cluster of casks lashed securely amidships, each one dark with pitch and sweat streaked from rough handling. There's a faint aroma that reaches you even here, something sour and tangy and decidedly alive. You watch as two men pry open the top of one barrel. A pungent cloud rises immediately. They both lean back, scrunching their noses, but only for a breath. Then they reach in with wooden ladles, stirring through the pale, lumpy contents. One of them glances up, catches you watching, and bares yellow teeth in a grin. Hungry, are you, little seal pup? You can't stop yourself from asking, what is it? Sky, he says proudly. Well, nearly. Some call it clabber. Curds and whey gone thick. Keeps the belly from thinking it's been forgot. His companion snorts. It's more goat than cow, more sour than milk, and more mystery than either. But you'll eat it, or wish you had, when your gut starts pinching in the night. You try not to look directly at the ladle, dripping with what resembles lumpy white sludge. Instead, your eyes wander to the other barrels. One is full of dried fish, heads still on, their mouths frozen in tiny O-shaped screams. Another holds cuts of mutton submerged in heavy brine, so salty it looks more like a potion than anything you'd willingly swallow. There are smaller sacks and jars tucked in among the barrels. Onions, bundles of garlic still caked with earth, and dried herbs tied up with string. It isn't much, but it's something to keep the worst of rot at bay, and perhaps to fool the mouth into thinking it's getting more than salt and fat. Ever had barley flatbread so hard you could skate it across a frozen lake? Your benchmate asks. He digs under the bench, pulls out a small round loaf wrapped in a scrap of cloth. He wraps it against the wooden seat. The thump it makes is somewhere between a drum beat and a blacksmith's hammer. We soak it in ale when we can, or just gnaw it and hope the teeth hold. Then he breaks off a piece and shoves it into your hand. It's rough under your fingers, studded with tiny seeds, and smells faintly of dust and malt. You take a tentative bite. The taste is better than the texture, earthy, a little sweet, but dry enough to make your tongue stick to your gums. Chew slow, he advises with a wink, goes down easier, and saves your jaws from seizing up. Food barrels open up everywhere now, each group along the benches diving into their provisions. Someone uncorks a smaller cask of ale, thin, barely fermented, but safer than water. It's passed along from hand to hand. When it reaches you, you take a cautious swallow. It's sour but cold, and it chases down the crumbs in your throat with a tiny warmth that spreads out under your ribs. You start to see how this all works. Food isn't just nourishment, it's ceremony, it's distraction. It's a way to knit this band of rough strangers together, each sharing from the same sour pot, the same salty barrel, the same battered drinking horn. Across the aisle, a gray-bearded fellow with a nose that looks like it's been broken more times than you've had birthdays raises his horn high. To our bellies, may they last longer than our luck, he bellows. A ragged cheer answers him, and for a moment, the ship seems warmer, smaller, more like a rolling feast hall than a wooden coffin bobbing atop endless black water. But then the breeze shifts, and you catch the rank undertone of something else. One of the barrels farthest down must have turned. You see a couple of sailors poking at its contents with thin disgust, muttering curses, likely a mishandled meat cask, or maybe the brine grew too weak and invited unwelcome guests, insects, even maggots. No one throws it overboard. Not yet. It might still be salvageable. Cut away the worst, sprinkle on more salt, and hope that desperate hunger makes fine sauce. Your stomach squirms again. It'll learn. You turn back to your own circle, just as your benchmate tears open a small waxed packet and reveals a knob of hard yellow cheese streaked with blue veins. He cuts off a sliver with his belt knife and holds it out. Try this. Goat cheese, left to sit till the gods say so. Strong enough to clear the nose, eh? You accept it. Bite down. The taste is, well, sharp, is putting it mildly. Your eyes actually water, and he slaps your back so hard you nearly choke. That's the sign it's good, he laughs. Through all of this, the crew keeps a casual eye on the horizon. Even eating is done with one hand, ready to brace or catch a rolling cup. The Longship is never still. It heaves under you like a restless creature, dipping and twisting on swells that seem to come from nowhere. A sudden lurch sends a man stumbling into a barrel, nearly toppling it. His shout draws laughter, but also a few tense glances toward the sky, where clouds are starting to cluster. Soon enough, You realize there's a system to the meals. Certain men check the barrels, dole out shares, keep quiet, tally of what's been used and what remains. They're not exactly quartermasters, but every ship has a handful who can be trusted not to steal extra mouthfuls when backs are turned. And they have to, because while the first days might be loose and cheerful, extra hunks of bread, generous ladles of curds, the tune will change when the barrels run low, when the only things left in the bottom are a few slick fish skins and the sour dregs of brine. Then, even friends might start counting each other's bites. A boy barely out of childhood, maybe 14, sits across from you with a bowl balanced on his knees. He eats methodically, scraping every last bit from the wooden sides, then licks the spoon, then his fingers. You wonder if he's imagining how many days until that small ritual is all that stands between him and real hunger. Still, spirits are surprisingly high. There's a certain bravado that comes easy when the barrels are still mostly full. A man across the way cradles a cup of ale and starts singing a rowdy tune about a farmer's daughter and a goat that's definitely not meant for polite company. Others join in, pounding fists on the benches in time, voices carrying out over the dark water. You find yourself smiling, despite the rocking ship, despite the tang of sour cheese still clinging to your teeth. Because here on this long, lean dragon of oak and tar, this is living, not comfortable, not clean, certainly not quiet, but real, loud, communal, in a way few modern souls ever taste. For tonight, at least, the food barrels are open, the ale is flowing, and your new brothers in sweat and salt are close by, sharing their jokes, their songs, their slightly moldy bread. And tomorrow, you'll worry about tomorrow. Tonight, you're part of something rough and raucous and absolutely unforgettable. You're full. Well, not full exactly, more like less empty. Your belly now sloshes gently with sour ale and goat cheese, so aged it might qualify for a Viking pension. But it's enough to keep your limbs moving, to keep your thoughts clearish, to settle into the slow rhythm of Longship life. The wind has picked up since the last round of oar strokes, and the sail is unfurled now, catching gusts with a groan that echoes through the mast like the ship is sighing. You hear the creak of ropes straining, the flap of wool dyed the color of dried blood, and underneath it all, the ocean, always the ocean. It's a ceaseless, breathing thing. A slap here, a splash there, little waves tapping the hull like curious fingers. The Longship rocks with a lullaby tempo, just enough to remind you you're not on solid ground anymore, and may not be for weeks. You glance down. Your boots are damp, not wet from a wave, not soaked from a leak, just damp, permanently. You start to suspect they'll never be dry again, that some damp-footed god of sea travel has claimed them as his sacred offering. Your seat is no better. The bench is hard, the air biting. When you shift your weight, the thin cushion of bundled furs beneath you gives slightly, releasing a faint puff of old sweat and sheep. It's the smell of life at sea, of close quarters, and bodies packed tight like firewood. And speaking of bodies, everyone's finding space for sleep now. Not real sleep, not the good pillow-fluffed blanket-snuggled kind that ends with a soft morning stretch and pancakes. No, this is more like a group collapse. It begins quietly. A few men curl up where they sit, cloaks wrapped around shoulders, heads tucked into elbows. Others slide down to lie flat between benches, or wedge themselves under the sloping sides of the ship, finding shelter from the spray. One guy, an ambitious sleeper, has rigged his sack into a makeshift hammock between two water barrels. You're 95% sure it's going to snap in the night, but for now he's smug and swinging. You try to find a spot. Every space is already someone's claimed territory. Elbows jab out, knees poke under blankets. Someone has their foot half hanging in the middle of the walking path, and another guy is using his shield as a pillow, his snores echoing through the wooden ribs of the ship like a sluggish drumbeat. You finally slide into a shallow space near the midline, curl around your cloak, and attempt something resembling rest. Except you can't really lie flat. The ship rocks too much, and the boards underneath are uneven. Your shoulder finds a knot in the timber that feels like the corner of a really angry book. You shift. You settle. You wait. It's cold. Of course it's cold. The sea wind doesn't sleep, and neither do your toes. You curl them up inside your boots, trying to share body heat with yourself, which sounds like a nice idea, but works about as well as hugging a snowman. Your ear itches, but not like a normal itch, more like crawling. You freeze, slowly reach up and scratch. Something tiny wriggles under your nail. You don't want to know. You flick it away like a coward and pretend you imagined it. A cough sounds nearby, followed by the unmistakable noise of someone sleep-talking. Not words, just the half-garbled noises of a man deep in a dream or a nightmare. One of the older sailors grumbles, "Tell your ghosts to shut up." More laughter. The weird thing is, you're getting used to it. The rough, communal exhaustion, the wet wood under your back, the steady creak of ship bones and wind breath. It's oddly soothing. You drift a little. Not quite asleep, but somewhere close. And then, without warning, a rogue splash crashes over the side and lands squarely on your midsection. You bolt upright, gasping. Cold seawater seeps through your cloak, your tunic, your trousers. Someone yells, "Brace!" and another wave hits, not as big, but enough to turn your already miserable blanket into a sponge. Now everyone's awake. The men closest to the port side curse and scramble to rearrange their sleeping bundles. Someone's foot ends up in another man's face, and a flurry of slapping, shoving, and muttered insults ensues. You wring out your cloak as best you can. It squelches. You consider crying, but instead you laugh, because really, what else is there to do? "Welcome to Longship luxury," your benchmate says, with a grin. Now you're baptized. Eventually, the chaos dies down. Everyone returns to their spots, a little wetter, a little grumpier, and the sleep attempt resumes. You lie back. Your cloak is damp. Your boots are damp. Your hair is probably damp. Your soul is soggy. But the rocking returns. Soft, rhythmic, hypnotic. You begin to notice things. The sound of the sea licking at the hull. The low hum of wind in the sail rigging. The scent of pine pitch mixing with wool and wet rope. Someone's quietly humming. A tune you don't recognize, but it's low and melodic, like something sung to a baby who'll grow up to swing an axe. You close your eyes, and just as you're about to slide into real sleep, the man next to you mumbles something in his sleep. You can't catch the words, but the tone is tender. A name, maybe. Someone he misses. You realize, suddenly, that these men, these gruff, stinking, fearless seafarers, are also sons, brothers, maybe even husbands. They dream of home, too. of warm fires and dry straw and soup that doesn't taste like preserved despair. You're not alone out here, and weirdly, that makes it all a little easier. You pull your cloak tighter, press your cheek to the rolled bundle under your head, and let the ship rock you again. The stars overhead blink down through breaks in the clouds. The dragon ship glides through the dark water like a ghost. And you sleep, if only a little, rocked by wind, held by wave, wrapped in the wild, wet cradle of the sea. It's sometime deep in the night, though what exactly counts as night out here is a bit fuzzy. The sky is a dark, endless sweep of smudged charcoal, dotted with only the most stubborn stars that refuse to be snuffed by drifting clouds. You've been dozing in shallow fits, waking each time the ship tilts a little too far or someone shifts and bumps your leg. You're just starting to slip back under when you hear it. A low voice, roughened by age and salt, telling a story. It drifts out over the deck, and you realize it's not meant for you specifically. It's for everyone and no one. Maybe just for the old sailor's own comfort, but others are listening, because the whispers and shuffling quiet down like small animals pricking up their ears in a dark forest. And then the sea split itself right open. The voice rasps, I swear by the hammer. A seam wide as two longships laid end to end, with black water pouring down into it like the world's own mouth, swallowing every wave that strayed too close. And out of it a shape, long as 20 men, scales glittering like wet knives in the moonlight. Your skin prickles. You don't have to see his face to picture the glint in his eyes, a sly smile curling beneath a drooping mustache. He's got them hooked. Your shipmates, tough and brash by day, now curled into their cloaks and wrapped as children at a winter hearth. He looked at us. He continues. One great green eye, round and cold as a glacier, stared like it was deciding if we were worth the trouble. Then it slipped back under, so smooth the sea closed up behind it without a bubble. A short silence. You can almost hear the collective shiver that ripples along the benches. That's a gull's fart of a tale, another voice calls, trying for bravado, but it comes out too quick, too forced. Old Brynjolf, you've got seaweed for brains. Everyone knows it's the fog plays tricks. Brynjolf laughs, a rusty sound. Oh, I've seen fog play tricks too. Once I thought I spotted a fine girl standing on a rock waving to me. When we pulled in close, turned out she was a seal, chewing on a dead fish. Prettier than my third wife, if I'm honest. That earns a ripple of cautious chuckles, tension loosening a notch, but not completely. Because the sea has a way of listening in on these conversations, a way of swallowing laughter, then echoing back something far less friendly. A sudden slap of water against the hull makes everyone flinch. The longship tilts just enough that you feel your stomach tumble. Someone mutters a quick prayer under his breath, probably to Thor, who guards thunder and storms, though at this hour it might just as well be to any god who'll listen. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling your heart scuttle up into your throat for a beat, before the ship rights itself again. Another voice pipes up, this one younger, sharper with nerves. My uncle says there's a ghost ship, sails these waters, empty, save for the lantern it carries, swinging off the prow. If you see it, you're done. Means your name's already whispered among the dead. A soft exhale runs around the benches. No one quite wants to scoff at that. Brynjolf clicks his tongue. That's why I keep my eyes on my own damn deck at night. Nothing good ever come from staring too long at dark water. Might decide to stare back. You swallow. You can't help it. Your gaze drifts out past the rail anyway. The water is impossibly black. Deeper than ink, deeper than the worst of your childhood nightmares. Now and then, it flashes a dull reflection of a cloud or star, but mostly it's just nothing. A hungry kind of nothing. You tear your eyes away, heart thudding a little too fast. There's a strange comfort in the sounds close by. The groan of timber, the sigh of men shifting under blankets, the wet sniff of someone with a cold. These are human noises, mortal, manageable. But your mind keeps trying to imagine it, what it would be like to see some monstrous shape rise from those depths. Or worse, to glimpse a solitary lantern bobbing through the fog, no oars, no crew, just that eerie swinging light beckoning you closer. Maybe you'd follow it. Maybe that's the trick. Maybe the dead don't come for you. Maybe they just wait, patient and polite, until curiosity drags you off the deck yourself. A quiet voice near your feet breaks the hush again. Tell about the mare of the sea, it says. It's almost a plea. Brynjolf obliges without missing a beat. Ah, the Hafrua. She rises out of the swells, all shining hair and soft singing. You see her and think, by the gods, what's a woman doing out here? No ship in sight. But it's not a woman. Not really. You lean over to get a better look. Maybe she's beckoning. Maybe she just looks so lost. Next you know, her arms are around your neck, pulling you down, and down's where you stay. They say the sea's bottom is paved with men who thought they were about to find love. He makes a wet kissing noise that earns a few groans and dark chuckles. You press back into your own damp roll of furs, trying not to imagine long fingers curling up over the side of the ship, or an eye opening under the waves, slow and luminous, fixed right on you. Above, the sail whispers as it shifts, catching a small playful gust. The ropes give tiny squeals. A gull cries somewhere unseen. A thin wail that doesn't sound nearly as comical in the dark. You close your eyes, try to breathe slow. Try not to think about all the things that might be lurking just out of sight. And soon enough, your mind starts to drift. Stories mixing with half-dreams. The dragon ship becomes a living beast, thrumming under your cheek. The waves lap like lazy tongues. Somewhere, Brynjolf's voice fades into a gravelly murmur, telling yet another ghost tale to keep the dark entertained. Eventually, you stop listening, and though sleep doesn't come easy on a longship, eventually it does come, carrying you off, hopefully somewhere safer than all the places your imagination just wandered. Morning, or what passes for morning on this murky stretch of northern sea, crawls in like a hungover cat. The sky's a quilt of low, sulky clouds, drooling a fine mist that clings to every hair on your head. The world is washed in the kind of gray that makes you question if the sun still exists at all. There's a slow stirring aboard the Longship. A few men groan as they sit up, cracking joints and rubbing sore necks. Someone hawks and spits over the side. Another scratches under his tunic with a kind of desperate satisfaction, probably chasing fleas or lice or whatever else, decided to hitch a ride. You stretch cautiously, feeling every bruise from sleeping on a wooden bench that's about as forgiving as a tax collector. Your cloak is still damp from last night's unexpected sea baptism. It smells like wet goat, but it's warmish, so you pull it tighter around your shoulders and look around. This is when you start to notice something. unexpectedly endearing. The way these rough, iron-banded souls greet a new day together. Someone mutters a hoarse joke. Woke up, still got all me fingers. Must be a good omen. A smattering of tired laughter follows. Near the mast, two young men shove each other back and forth, playful like puppies, trying to see who'll slip first on the slick deck. Their feet squeal on the planks, arms windmilling. One finally goes down with a dramatic flop and is instantly rewarded by a rain of mock insults. Careful, pretty boy. Don't break your neck before you've kissed that milkmaid waiting back home. Bah, he'd have better luck with Brynjolf's goat. The fallen youth sticks out his tongue, flips them a rude gesture, then clambers back to his feet, laughing despite the new stain on his tunic. Further along the benches, two older warriors sit close, foreheads nearly touching, as they argue in low, conspiratorial voices about who owes who a favor, likely from some long-ago brawl or a dice game that ended with someone's dignity left in the mud. Their tones are sharp, but the eyes crinkle in amusement. It's half ritual, half memory theater. And just beside you, your benchmate from yesterday digs into a small leather pouch, fishing out something that makes your stomach perk with curiosity. Hazelnuts, he says, catching your look. Not enough to fill a squirrel, but here, try one. He tosses you a small, dusty nut. You pop it into your mouth, crack it with your teeth, and for the briefest moment, there's sweetness, a ghost of forests and warmer seasons. The man grins. Stole 'em from my cousin's bride chest. Figured I'd need 'em more than she would if we didn't come back. Then he sobers, just for a breath, and adds, "Course, if we do come back, I'll have to make it up to her. Maybe let her braid my beard with those stupid ribbons she likes." You laugh softly, but it's a gentle kind of laugh, because it strikes you that these men, these feared raiders, and howling berserks in every terrified monk's prayer, are in many ways absurdly human. They carry tiny secrets in their pockets, small tokens that remind them of home. A leather strap from a sweetheart, a twist of cloth that once belonged to a mother or sister. You spot one man pressing something to his lips before tucking it under his shirt. Could have been anything. A bead, a scrap of carved bone, but the way he handles it, you'd think it was spun from gold. They also gossip. Oh, do they gossip? A man with a scarred cheek leans over to another and whispers something that makes both their eyebrows bounce. Then they burst into snickers, casting sly looks down the length of the ship. You strain to catch the words, catch only the name of one of the younger oarsmen and something about his clumsy hands, a milkmaid's apron, and a barn that'll never quite smell the same. The laughter's infectious, even those trying to nap through the morning groan and roll over, half smiling. And when the banter wears thin, the singing starts. It begins low, a rumble in one throat, then two, then half a dozen voices weaving together in a tune that's more rhythm than melody. No fancy harps, no dainty love ballads, just the old work songs of oars and journeys, meant to keep men pulling together when muscles rebel and minds start drifting homeward. You catch yourself humming along, even if you have no clue about the words. They're in a rough tongue, full of hard consonants and swallowed vowels, but the feeling behind them is unmistakable. It's pride, it's defiance, it's the sure knowledge that out here on the endless sea, these brothers in calloused hands are all each other's got. As they sing, you notice the little ways they share the morning, passing around a single whetstone to touch up blades, swapping strips of dried meat, even nudging shoulders together as if to say, "Still here, still alive, still yours. There's a warmth in it that belies the chill seeping through your boots. And for a fleeting, startling moment, you realize you're glad to be here, glad to share this damp, cramped, absurd floating world with these joke-cracking, half-singing, nut-sharing men. Because long after the sagas forget your name, long after the loot's been spent and the dragon ships rot to driftwood, these small scraps of friendship, these are what truly keep men warm at sea. You breathe it in, salt, tar, wool, laughter, and maybe, just maybe, the faintest promise of sun pushing somewhere behind those thick gray clouds. Tomorrow, they might brawl. Tomorrow, someone might get a dagger in the ribs over a cheating dice throw. But for this tender scrap of morning, it's all simple, all human. And in this brotherhood of damp cloaks and shared jokes, even the cold feels less cruel. It's around midday when one of the older crew, bald on top, beard like a frostbitten hedge, shuffles down the center of the ship carrying a battered leather jug. He tips it back for a long pull, then offers it around with a smirk that says this is the good stuff, though judging by the smell, good might be stretching it. When it reaches you, you peer cautiously inside. The liquid is a cloudy amber, flecked with bits that you decide not to identify for your own mental health. It smells sharp, sour, and oddly floral, like someone poured honey over a compost pile. Your benchmate elbows you. Go on, fresh fish. Better sour ale than seawater in your guts. So you take a sip. It's thin, almost watery, with just a ghost of sweetness beneath a wave of sour that makes your jaw twitch. But once it slides down, there's a gentle warmth that spreads out from your chest, unfurling into your shoulders and arms like someone's lit a small fire inside you. Not bad, not exactly good, but not bad. The jug continues its slow journey down the benches, punctuated by low laughs, coughs, and the occasional cheeky toast. To the wives we left behind, may they be fat when we return. To the cows we'll steal, may they moo only for us. And, inevitably, to Odin's ravens, may they feast elsewhere today. That last one draws a chorus of dark chuckles, because everyone knows ravens mean death, and no one here wants to tempt the gods more than necessary. Drinking on a longship isn't just about chasing a buzz. It's a survival tactic. Water sours quickly in these wooden barrels. A week or two at sea, and your fresh spring water turns to a thin green soup of slime and invisible monsters that would have you running for the bushes if bushes existed out here. So they brew ale. Weak, yes. Watered down to the point where it wouldn't get a goat tipsy, but it's safer. The low alcohol strangles the tiny things that would otherwise dance gleefully into your gut and turn your insides into a festival of cramps and frantic prayers. It also helps dull the sharper edges of the voyage, the constant ache in your arms, the back that refuses to straighten, the quiet fear that maybe, this time, you won't see home again. After a few rounds, voices grow looser. Someone up near the prow starts a story about the time he outran a Saxon lord's fat hunting dogs with nothing but a tunic and a stolen goose under his arm. Another chimes in with a boast about bedding 2 sisters in Hedeby, though his friend immediately interrupts to declare they were both homely as trolls' knees. You watch it all with growing amusement. These men who look so fearsome from afar, their long hair, their scarred faces, their iron-bound axes, are up close gloriously petty. They rib each other, pick food from each other's beards, argue over who's the ugliest, and make scandalous guesses about who snores the loudest. There's a warmth to it that no fur cloak could rival. At one point, your benchmate leans close, breath rich with the tang of sour ale, and confides in you like an old friend. Back home, I've a wife who'd brain me if she knew half the things I've done on these trips. Big hands, bigger voice, scares the goats and me both. Then he laughs, but there's a soft, secret fondness in it that cuts through all the brashness. You grin, feeling oddly honored he chose to tell you. The laughter and small confessions weave together, building an invisible net that catches each man here. It keeps loneliness at bay, keeps darker thoughts from creeping in. Because when the sun dips lower, if you can even call this hazy torch in the sky a sun, and the sea darkens like spilled ink, everyone will remember how tiny a longship truly is, how cold the wind can bite, how vast and empty the world beyond these wooden planks remains. So they drink, not to forget entirely, but to soften the hard lines, to let fear slump over on the bench beside them, instead of coiling tight in their guts. And you drink with them, because out here, far from any warm hearth or sure promise of land, sharing a sour cup of ale becomes something close to sacred, a little pledge that says, we're in this together. If we're unlucky enough to get swallowed by the sea tomorrow, at least we laughed first. You tip your head back, let the last mouthful burn a tiny trail down your throat, and pass the jug on. Then lean back against the rail, gaze out across the gray water, and exhale a breath that seems to carry some of the worry out with it. Beside you, your benchmate sighs too, the two of you slumping shoulder to shoulder in companionable silence. And for a fragile, perfect heartbeat, it's almost easy to believe that the sea itself is listening, approving, maybe choosing, for now, to keep your small, floating fellowship safe another day. Hours slip by, as if the sea itself were quietly shuffling them away under its dark skirts. The longship rides gentle swells now, less a beast surging forward, and more like a drowsy cat stretching, settling, curling in on itself. The rhythm of the voyage has slowed. There's no immediate need for the back-breaking discipline of rowing, which leaves the crew with a terrible, dangerous thing: time. And nothing stirs up restless men like too much time in too small a space. It starts innocently enough. A bored young oarsman with a mop of reddish hair pulls a tiny carved figure from his pouch, some half-finished god or hero, worn smooth at the edges by days of anxious fingers. He sets it on the bench between his knees, pulls out his knife, and begins whittling with quick, practiced strokes. A pair beside him lean in, watching, offering crude suggestions that would probably get them collectively struck by lightning if the gods had any sense of taste. Farther up, two older sailors crack jokes over a pile of fishhooks, trying to outdo each other in filthiness. You only catch snatches, and she said it was bigger than a cod, followed by a roar of laughter, someone nearly choking on a mouthful of ale. Then comes the inevitable escalation. A brawny lad with shoulders broad enough to serve dinner on plants, his elbows on his knees, and challenges the row across from him. Bet none of you goat kissers can best me at a proper hold. They lock forearms, hands gripping tight, elbows braced. It's an old test. Wrists wound together, each trying to bend the other's arm back toward the bench. First one to break or flinch gets to nurse his pride for the rest of the day. It's all in good fun, at first. Faces tighten, teeth bare, arms tremble. The muscles stand out in ropes beneath sun-reddened skin. One man roars through clenched teeth. By Thor's left. Ah, and finally his wrist buckles, knuckles slamming into the bench. The victor crows, pounding his chest, while the loser shakes out his hand, laughing through the pain. But the next pairing is less friendly. A slighted young man with something to prove squares off against a middle-aged fighter known for his temper. The grin on the older man's face is a thin, humorless thing. Their hands clasp, and immediately it's clear there's no showmanship here, only brute force, each trying to grind the other into splinters. The younger one's face purples. A bead of sweat rolls down his temple. The older man snarls something low, a private insult only they can hear. And with a sudden jerk, the boy's wrist gives way, slamming painfully against the bench edge. But instead of laughing it off, he surges up with a muttered curse and shoves the victor in the chest. There's a half-second of shocked silence. Then someone says, too brightly, "Ah, boys, save it for the Saxons, eh?" The older man scowls, opens his mouth, thinks better of it. He gives the young one a mild cuff to the side of the head, instead, rough but not cruel. The tension breaks, with a few awkward chuckles, shoulders relaxing like coiled ropes, finally allowed to slack. Close call, but that's how it goes out here. Tempers ride high when boredom tightens its grip. When the games simmer down, conversation takes over. Gossip flourishes on longships like mold in damp barrels. Who's sweet on whose sister? Who was caught trying to swap out a chunk of silver for a pebble in a rigged trade? Who farted so foul last night that it chased the rats off the ship? These are the social currencies that keep men entertained when all else fails. One man leans in conspiratorially, tells a story about how he once saw their very chieftain, naked as the day he was born, chasing a goat through a bathyard because it's stolen a chunk of bread. You're not sure you believe him, but it earns a scandalized whoop from half the benches. Then the talk shifts into playful boasts. How many women waiting for you back home, eh, Hakon? Huh, more like how many goats, someone jeers. Careful, Hakon shoots back with a wink. Goat might treat me better than your ma did last spring. A roar of mock outrage, fists pounding the benches in mirth. There's a cleverness to it all. This shared game of insult and brag, designed to keep things light, to keep fists from turning serious. Because everyone knows how thin the line is between a joke and a grudge when you're stuck shoulder to shoulder for weeks on a deck that rocks like a drunken uncle. Someone eventually drags out a small dice game, scratched into a plank between them. Pebbles stand in for silver, bright little shells for larger bets. It's less about winning and more about watching someone else lose, with exaggerated groans and muttered curses that draw sympathetic and secretly delighted claps on the back. At one point, your benchmate nudges you. "We do this so we don't kill each other, you know?" he says quietly, voice pitched so only you can hear. His grin is crooked, tired but genuine. Little laughs now save us big blood later. And just like that, you realize how delicate this dance truly is. The games, the stories, the endless rounds of light insults, it's all glue, holding this rattling bundle of fears and hopes and half-dreamed riches together long enough to reach whatever shore awaits. Because in the end, it's not just about muscle or axes. It's about finding reasons, however ridiculous, to stay brothers rather than turn into wolves. The ship sways. Someone laughs at a joke you missed, and for now, just for now, everything holds. Salt wind whips across the deck, carrying with it the faint echo of those easy taunts and the gentle slap of dice on wood. You lean back against the rail, grin at nothing, and let it all wash over you. Because if you're going to be half mad on a longship, better to be half mad together. Night returns like it's never truly left, just lingered behind a thin veil, waiting to slip back over the sky and claim the ship again. The clouds have thickened, turning the world into a lidded pot that traps every sound. You hear the sea differently now, its hush more intimate, like it's come close to breathe against your neck. Around you, men settle in for another awkward attempt at rest. They wrap their cloaks tighter, adjust damp bundles under their heads, try to carve out the illusion of a bed from rough benches and lumpy cargo nets. It's colder tonight, not by much, but enough that your breath fogs thicker, that the tips of your ears burn and then go numb. You shuffle your feet, pulling them beneath you, but the cold finds them anyway. It seeps up through the soles of your boots like a sly promise. You shut your eyes, hoping that will trick your mind into feeling warmer. Instead, your senses sharpen. You notice the scent first. The oily tang of pine tar, heavy and dark, mingled with wool, gone damp and rank. There's also a ghost of sour ale, still clinging to beards and tunics, the stale fart of someone who's had too much goat cheese, and under it all, the raw salt of the sea. Then come the sounds. The ship itself breathes in groans and sighs. Its timbers stretch and protest with each slow roll. Somewhere, a rope taps against a mast in a soft, irregular rhythm, like a heartbeat that can't quite decide if it wants to go on. And then, of course, there's the chorus of sleep. Snoring. So much snoring. One man near your shoulder rattles off a heavy nasal growl that actually warbles at the end, as though he's snorting laughter in his dreams. Another gives a thin whistle each time he exhales, like wind threading through the cracks in a door. Someone across the deck lets out a deep, contented sigh, followed by 3 quiet smacks of his lips, dreaming of feasts, perhaps. A few try to fight it. You hear them shifting, muttering curses, elbowing their neighbors. One sharp voice growls, "Roll over, you cow." Sounds like you're choking on your own tongue. That earns a muffled grunt, a shuffle. Then the snoring returns, now angled slightly away, but still blissfully oblivious to the rage it's causing. Eventually, you start to laugh, softly, into your sleeve. Because what else can you do? You try to find your own patch of comfort. A bit of sailcloth bunched under your head, knees drawn up tight to your chest, the cloak pulled over so your breath warms your face, turning the wool damp. It's not cozy, but it's what you've got. And as you lie there, drifting on the edge of sleep, you find your thoughts wandering to things you didn't expect. You think about your family, maybe a mother stirring a pot back home, humming to herself, or a father mending a fence by lantern light, or someone's laugh, high and surprised, that always made you feel like a better person, just for being the reason it rang out. You wonder if they miss you, or if they've simply accepted that the sea takes as it pleases, and only fools measure their hearts against its hunger. Then you wonder if they think you were brave, or just stupid. The ship gives a slow lurch, boards creaking. A small wave breaks against the hull with a hollow slap, sending a fine spray up to patter your face. You lick salt from your lips. And maybe just for a fleeting moment, you wish you were anywhere else. But the warmth of bodies nearby, the occasional sleepy grunt or rustle of someone adjusting their cloak, pulls you back, reminds you that you're not alone, not out here. These men, who a few hours ago were teasing each other about goats and dice games, now sleep piled close, shoulders touching, sharing the faint heat of living flesh, like animals in a winter den. You feel a bit of that warmth reach you, a quiet reassurance. Even the snoring takes on a strange comfort, a reminder that, for tonight at least, your companions still breathe, still dream, still wake to gripe and jest another day. You exhale slowly. Let your eyes drift closed again, and just as sleep begins to pull you under, the ship shifts once more, the ropes groan, and the sea keeps whispering, soft, steady, tireless, rocking you, rocking all of you through another long night on the water. Dawn tries to come gently. It really does. The sky turns from black to a murky, bruised gray, clouds dragging their bellies across the sea, so low it looks like they might scrape the mast. Somewhere far off, a thin line of lighter color promises that the sun still exists, even if it seems embarrassed to show its face. You peel open sticky eyes. Your neck gives a reluctant pop as you straighten. Someone's foot is on your cloak. Someone else's head has been using your shin as a pillow. Everything feels damp, including your spirit, and your skin itches. Not just a little. It's an all-over, crawling, maddening sort of itch. At first, you blame the salt drying on your skin, but then you scratch your side and dislodge something tiny and suspiciously quick. You freeze. Slowly, you part the layers of your tunic and shirt. A tiny bug scuttles along the hem. Could be a flea, could be a louse, could be a plague in miniature. You flick it off, hoping it'll drown, though you're not sure the sea even wants these freeloaders. You look around and realize you're not the only one waging war on your own skin. A few benches down, a burly sailor with hair like a thatch roof has stripped off his outer tunic and is inspecting the seams of his shirt. He picks something off with a grunt, squashes it between his thumbnail and the flat of his knife blade, wipes the blade on his trousers, entirely unbothered. Another man, older, with a beard that's half tangled straw and half old secrets, methodically drags the edge of his small eating knife along his forearm. Not enough to cut, just enough to catch anything tiny that tries to scamper. The edge of the blade scrapes over little red bumps. Now and then, he pauses to crush something between his fingers. Woke up with a whole bloody family reunion under my belt, he mutters to no one in particular. Your benchmate, ever the cheerful philosopher, sees you scratching and leans over with a grin. Oh, don't worry. If you can't find a wife when we reach shore, the lice have already married you and settled down with a brood. He delivers this with such casual delight that you almost laugh. Almost. Instead, you give him a sour look and keep scratching. Someone else jokes that it's like carrying a tiny herd of goats under your tunic. Warm, lively, always nibbling. The men nearby chuckle, scratching their beards in resigned solidarity. Because that's the truth of it. Everyone's infested. Everyone. You'd have better luck finding a herring that's never seen salt water than a Viking on a long voyage who doesn't share living quarters with fleas or lice. It's part of the package, like the endless salted fish, the sour ale, the constant damp. Some tri-folk remedies. You spot a man who's daubed something pungent on the inside of his collar. Smells like garlic mashed up with rancid butter. Keeps him away, he insists, but the smirk of the others says otherwise. Another fellow, determined to maintain some semblance of personal dignity, is actually plucking hairs from his chest one by one and inspecting the roots for unwelcome guests. He looks miserably determined, like he's studying for an exam he knows he'll fail. The lice don't care who you are. Old warriors with 10 raids under their belts, green boys on their first trip, even the ship's steersman with rings on every finger. They all slap at their skin, mutter curses, and share in this scratchy misery. And the way they handle it, with a grim camaraderie. Because really, what else can you do? One man starts a little song off-key and cheeky about fleas dancing reels in his beard. The verses get ruder with every line until half the men are slapping their thighs in laughter, making jokes about how the fleas at least keep each other warm when the nights are cold. It becomes a kind of rolling roast. Careful, Torstein. Scratch too much, and you'll start a fire. Your lice'll pack their bags and move to my side of the bench. They'd be disappointed. I've only got bald patches left for 'em.
Ha! That's more than your woman says you've got!
Rude, raucous, shameless, and somehow it makes the itch less awful. Because if there's one thing this voyage is teaching you, it's that shame can't survive long in close company. Not when your life is spent elbow to elbow, hip to hip, scratching at the same colonies of bugs together. You grin despite yourself, give your shoulder a good rub, and watch a tiny speck try to scurry up your sleeve. You flick it off into the sea with theatrical disgust. Hope you can swim, little bastard, you mutter. Your benchmate snorts. Probably hops a ride on a fish, tells all his kin how fine the view is up your neck. And so it goes. Itching, scratching, swearing, laughing. Another part of the Longship routine, as essential as the oars and the mast and the smell of tar. It might be grim, but it's also weirdly reassuring, because if you're itching, it means you're still alive to itch. If you're cursing the fleas, it means you haven't yet been swallowed by the sea. You pull your cloak tighter, give your neck one last hard scratch, and look out over the water. Onward floats the Longship, carrying its lively cargo of men, dreams, and enough lice to populate an entire mythical saga. And you, scratching right along with them, are officially, undeniably one of the crew. Night again. Of course it is. Out here, time doesn't so much pass as swirl around you, pulled by wind and wave into one long salty ribbon. The darkness arrives almost politely, tiptoeing in with the lowering clouds, until suddenly there's no distinction between sea and sky. Both are just black, endless, and slightly menacing. Someone lights a torch by the mast, the flame fluttering nervously in the damp air. It throws long, twitchy shadows across the faces of the men nearby, making their eyes glint, their features stretch into masks both comical and eerie. And this is exactly the kind of hour when stories crawl out from under the benches and settle in beside you, curling around your ankles like sly, purring cats. It starts with a familiar voice. Old Brynjolf, beard bristling, eyes reflecting the torchlight so they look molten. He clears his throat, spits over the side for luck, then leans forward, just enough that you instinctively lean in too. You ever hear about the Draugr ships? He asks, voice dropping so low you have to strain to catch it. A few men shift uneasily, muttering, but no one tells him to stop. No one really wants to be left out of a good scare. Brynjolf grins, all yellow teeth and wicked delight. They sail on nights like this. No moon, no lanterns, just the dark guiding them. Crews long dead, but they still stand at the oars, skin stretched tight like old leather, eyes bright as coals under their brows. Your skin tightens. You're not alone. Several men shift their cloaks higher, instinctively drawing them around their throats. Brynjolf continues, enjoying himself far too much. They row with a silence no living crew can keep, and if you hear them, oars dipping without splash, ropes groaning under hands that should be dust, best keep your eyes down. Best not stare, else they mark your ship to follow, to see which of you'll be joining their ranks next. He gives a sly wink. Happened to my cousin, or so he always swore. Said he glimpsed the pale helmsman smile at him, all cracked teeth and hollow cheeks. Week later, swept overboard by a playful wave. Never did find more than a boot. A nervous laugh skitters through the group, like mice dashing over your feet. Someone tries to lighten the mood, nudging his friend with an elbow. Better than the sea hag stories. I'd take a ship of dead men over a hag with seaweed hair, clutching at my stones any day. That earns more cautious chuckles, but not much relief, because fear loves company, and tonight it's got plenty. Another sailor, this one thin as a bent nail, pipes up from near the prow. His eyes are wide, hungry for attention. My grandmother said there's beasts under the water, serpents that wrap around whole ships, squeeze till your ribs pop like eggshells. Then they eat what's left, plank and man together. Your grandmother drank more mead than sense, someone retorts. But even he doesn't sound entirely convinced. You find yourself glancing out over the side, as if half expecting to see a pale hand reach up, fingertips breaking the surface before clawing for the rail. Nothing, just the sea. Always the sea, moving, whispering, dark. The torch flickers again, and for a heartbeat it casts long fingers of shadow that seem almost alive, reaching up the mast, down across the benches, curling around the men huddled together. A younger sailor mutters something under his breath. You catch just the edge of it, a plea to Thor to keep monsters in stories and oars in living hands. Brynjolf laughs again, softer this time. Ah, don't fret, pups. Most journeys you'll never see more than fat whales blowing snot at the sky and gulls that shit on your head like they were paid to do it. But every now and then, he lets it hang there, like bait on a hook. Silence. The ship gives a slow rock, as if sighing too. You pull your cloak tighter, not because of the cold, though the cold's always there, but because you can't help it. Your skin's alive with the sense that you're being watched, not by the men nearby, not by anything you can see, but by something out beyond the torchlight. Something patient. And isn't that always how it goes? When you were a child, tucked in tight, you were certain the darkness in your room had eyes. Now you're grown, 1,000 miles from home, on a dragon-headed longship, and still that old fear curls under your ribs. But you're not alone in it. All around, men clear their throats, scratch at their beards, find busy work for nervous hands. They've heard these stories before, told them even, and still they can't quite shake the chill that dances down their spines. It's a strange sort of comfort, knowing the fiercest raiders you'll ever meet are just as likely to glance over their shoulders when tales of ghost ships drift through the dark. Eventually someone stands, kicks at a coil of rope, and declares he's had enough foolish tales for one night. The spell breaks, laughter returns, a little forced but growing stronger, as men jostle shoulders, trading crude jokes to chase away Brynjolf's Draugr and sea serpents. The torch by the mast spits a final hiss, then burns steadier, and life on the longship goes on. More crowded breaths, more uneasy grins, more cold salt wind that might just be wind, or might be something whispering secrets from the depths. But you decide not to look too closely. Not tonight. Morning arrives with a damp, sour breath. It isn't so much that the sun rises as that the darkness gives up reluctantly, petulantly, letting in a smudged gray that offers little comfort. The sea is almost calm, rolling under the ship with a sleepy, heaving sigh. But above deck, it's alive, and not necessarily in a peaceful way. It starts with a grunt, then a shove, a muffled curse. Two young men, barely more than boys, really, are standing nose to nose near the mast, faces flushed, hands curled into angry fists at their sides. One of them has a smear of last night's fish oil on his cheek. The other's hair is sticking up in tufts where it's been slept on badly. Both look like they'd very much like to solve their problem with knuckles. You catch snatches of the argument. Something about who got the larger share of barley mash last night. Or maybe someone laughed too loud at someone else's girl back home. It honestly doesn't matter. Out here, under a sky that never quite brightens, and over a belly that's never quite full, any spark can catch. Your benchmate, who's been lazily carving a bit of driftwood into what might someday be recognized as a horse, glances up and smirks. Here we go. Wager a chunk of hard cheese. The skinny one goes down first. You grin despite yourself. Done. The boy's posture for another breath, cheeks puffed, jaws working, and suddenly it's on. They collide like squabbling puppies, arms locked around shoulders, feet slipping on the wet boards. One manages a sloppy punch that smacks into the other's ear. The yelp that follows is almost comedic. The older men howl with laughter. Someone gives a shrill whistle. Another bangs the side of the ship with his open hand, setting up a drumbeat that seems to egg them on. It's not vicious. Not yet. This isn't the blood-deep anger of men who've lost brothers or silver. It's rough, raw, almost affectionate in its way, like the sea itself, slapping you around but never quite swallowing you. Eventually, the bigger youth lands a clumsy hook that knocks his rival back into a pile of bundled rope. The defeated combatant stays down, panting, face twisted in half pain, half embarrassment. Your benchmate whoops. Hand it over. Grumbling, you toss him your last good-sized bit of cheese, which he bites into with exaggerated delight. Tastes like your pride. You roll your eyes, but your grin gives you away. The victor helps the loser up with a rough tug. There's a second where you think he might take another swing, but instead he gives a small, awkward shove, like a wolf testing another's ribs, and then claps the boy on the back hard enough to stagger him. Just like that, it's over. They slump down on a bench together, the winner pressing a scrap of cloth to the loser's split lip. A moment later, they're passing a cup between them, heads together, already forgetting what the fight was about. Because that's how it works out here. A little scrap is safer than swallowing every irritation. Better a bruised cheek than a festering grudge. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew settle back into their amusements, chuckling among themselves. You catch fragments of easy boasts drifting across the deck. I once took 3 men in a ring before breakfast, only because they were drunker than you were. Their dog had more sense than any of them. They're half jokes, half truths, all served up with the sharp snap of men who'd rather laugh than let fear find purchase. Because that's the secret, isn't it? Out here, surrounded by miles of cold indifference, these small rivalries and rough games are the only proof anyone still cares, still feels. It's like the Longship itself demands it. needs the tension, the playful hostility to keep the blood pumping. Otherwise, the boredom might drown them all more thoroughly than any wave. A few minutes later, you see the two former combatants sharing a crust of bread. One winces as he chews, prodding his tender lip, then flips a rude gesture at his new friend, who responds by nearly shoving him off the bench. Both are laughing. Your benchmate nudges you with an elbow. See? Better that than waking up to find a dagger between your ribs one night. He's not wrong, so you lean back, soaking in the damp, briny air. The aftertaste of other people's scraps of drama. The ship rocks on, creaking softly underfoot. Above, gulls wheel lazy arcs, mocking you with cries that sound suspiciously like laughter. And for all the bruises, the lice, the salt-chapped lips and empty stomachs, you realize this is a strange, battered kind of family, bound not by birth or gentle affection, but by the shared promise to keep each other close enough to argue, close enough to still be alive to laugh. It starts as a hush, not the peaceful kind, but the tight, bracing silence that crackles over the deck like frost. A ripple of motion draws your eyes upward, men glancing over shoulders, pulling cloaks tighter, gripping the rail without realizing it. Then you feel it. The wind changes, no longer a steady, playful slap across your cheek, but a sly hand that shifts and curls, carrying with it a colder, heavier breath. It smells sharper somehow, metallic, almost like the scent of a knife blade just before it draws blood. Your benchmate mutters under his breath, a word you don't catch, but it sounds more prayer than curse. Above you, the sky darkens by degrees. Pale gray deepens to pewter, then nearly black, crowded by low, boiling clouds. It looks close enough to reach up and stir with your finger. Somewhere ahead, far off across the restless sea, a spear of lightning jabs down and vanishes so quickly you wonder if you imagined it. You didn't. A beat later, the thunder comes, slow and ponderous, like a giant rolling over in his sleep. The men shift into a sudden, urgent ballet. No shouting, no one wastes breath on panic, but voices grow sharp, hands move faster. They lash down loose barrels, tighten knots, check the big steering oar. A few check their amulets, little Thor's hammers, carved beads, twisted bits of bone that smell faintly of old sweat and comfort. Someone grabs your arm. It's your benchmate. His grin now gone tight around the edges. Hold fast when she bucks, Greenling, he says, voice low. Keep your guts inside your ribs. Don't give Thor any new toys to fish from the waves. The ship lurches just then, as if offended by being discussed. The first proper swell rolls under you, lifting the Longship in a slow, stomach-turning heave. For a heartbeat, you're higher than seems decent, staring down at dark water curling with white streaks. Then it drops you hard enough that your knees complain. All around, you hear similar reactions, a strangled whoop, a nervous laugh that skids into a curse. One young man clutches the rail with both hands, eyes squeezed shut, whispering something over and over that might be a prayer or just his mother's name. The wind finds its voice now, threading through the rigging in high, fluting wails. It grabs the furled sail, sets it snapping like an angry beast. The men by the mast work with quick practiced hands to reef it tighter, giving the wind less canvas to toy with. Then the rain comes. Not a gentle mist, but a sudden, needling assault, cold as betrayal, blown sideways by the gusts. It pelts your face, seeps down your collar, turns the deck into a slick trap, waiting to steal your footing. You hunch over instinctively, cloak dragging wet against your neck, hands gripping the bench until your knuckles pale. Each breath tastes of salt and damp wood, the tang of tar rising strong as the ship strains and groans. Another wave hits, this one larger, meaner. It lifts the Longship at an angle that seems all wrong, tilting the deck so steep you have a mad thought that you'll simply tumble off into the waiting maw of the sea. Then crash, it slams back down, sending a fountain of icy spray across the benches. Someone to your left loses his grip, skids a good foot before a burly sailor grabs his arm and hauls him back. The rescued man's face is pure shock, mouth opening and closing like a landed fish. No one mocks him this time. Everyone's too busy hanging on themselves. Your own heart is hammering, loud enough you half expect the man beside you to comment on it. Lightning forks again, closer this time. For the briefest instant, the whole deck is painted in eerie brilliance, faces tense, water beating on brows and beards, ropes pulled taut like veins. Then the thunder hits, rolling over you so deeply it feels like it shakes something loose inside your ribs. And still the crew moves. Rowers brace their feet against crossbeams, leaning into oars when commanded, pulling in concert to keep the Longship's prow pointed into the worst of the swells. The steersman plants his feet wide, hands iron-locked around the tiller, every muscle in his arms standing out as he fights to keep the ship from swinging broadside. Somewhere behind you, Brynjolf bellows a laugh, half fear, half wild joy. Ha! Thor's flexing his shoulders for us today, boys. Your benchmate snorts, shaking rain from his beard. I hope he remembers we're just ants crawling on a board, or he'll squash us without blinking. Wave after wave strikes, sometimes smacking the hull so hard it's like being slapped across the ears. Water sloshes across the deck in hungry streams, swirling around your ankles, dragging stray bits of rope and flakes of tar with it. You clutch the rail tighter, teeth grit so hard your jaw aches. Time stretches. It becomes nothing but rocking, crashing, heaving. The world shrinks to the deck under your hands, the shouts of your shipmates, the taste of rain and salt. At last, slowly, grudgingly, the storm seems to decide it's bored of you. The sky remains dark, but the wind's shriek lowers to a tired moan. The waves, still large, lose their teeth, rolling under the hull in a more forgiving cradle. Men begin to straighten. Hands relax on ropes. A cautious breath or two is released, like hostages being told the ransom's paid. Your own shoulders drop, muscles humming from holding tight. You look over at your benchmate, find him grinning again, but it's a wan, worn grin, edges still frayed by what might have been. He bumps your shoulder with his own. Still breathing greenily? You nod, more relief than pride. He chuckles. Good. Means tomorrow we get to itch our fleas and drink sour ale again. If that's not fortune, I don't know what is. And you laugh, because somehow it's true. Above you, the Longship sighs, a living creature, wood and iron and soaked wool, grateful to still be afloat. And beneath all your fear, something else coils in your chest. Not quite joy, but a fierce, shivering gratitude that you're still here, clinging to this narrow strip of wood among all the deep, endless dark. The sea tried to swallow you. This time, at least, it spit you back. When the storm finally limps off across the water, grumbling to itself, like a giant that stubbed his toe, You're left with a silence so profound it almost rings in your ears. No thunder, no crashing waves, just the Longship bobbing gently on the after swell, creaking like an old war dog trying to remember how to breathe easy again. The sky hasn't cleared exactly. It's still low and heavy, with streaks of darker cloud like old bruises, but there's a softness to it now. Here and there, slivers of lighter gray hint that the sun is out there somewhere, busy with other obligations. For a long while, no one says anything. It's as if the ship itself has imposed a quiet, like the hush that follows a funeral. Everyone moves carefully, checking lines, peering over the rail to see if the hull took on any damage. Boots scuff across wet boards. A handful of men drag up buckets to bail out the worst of the water pooled around the mast. You roll your shoulders, wincing at the dull throb of muscles that spent the last stretch clenched as tight as bowstrings. Your hands ache from gripping the bench, knuckles scraped raw in places you didn't even realize. Nearby, Brynjolf pushes up from his seat with a grunt. His hair is plastered to his skull in soggy clumps, beard dripping. He looks around at the crew with a crooked grin. "Still here, are we?" he rasps. Then, as though testing whether his lungs still work, he lets out a whooping bark of laughter that cracks the solemn air like a hammer on thin ice. A few others join in. Short, sharp bursts of relief that tumble out whether they're welcome or not. Even your benchmate, usually the smug king of sarcasm, leans back against the rail and chuckles, rubbing a hand over his face like he can't believe it's still attached. Someone starts humming, a low, tuneless thing, not quite brave enough to be called a song, but it fills the space, threads between the benches, winds around hunched shoulders. Before long, a handful more pick it up. Words trickle in, a half-forgotten rowing chant, with nonsense verses about a farmer's ugly daughter who turned into a goat. You let it wash over you, absurd and strangely soothing. Your eyes drift to the horizon. The sea is calmer now, wearing a dull sheen that catches the faint light like tarnished silver. Long, gentle swells roll under the ship, reminding you of a sleeping creature still breathing, still massive, but for now content to let you exist on its back. That's the thing about the ocean. It's never truly still. Even in this hush, you can feel the way it heaves and sighs, as if disappointed it didn't get to keep a few of you as trophies. You look around and catch sight of one of the younger oarsmen. His face pale, eyes wide as moons. Probably never weathered anything like that before. His hands are shaking where they grip the edge of the bench. Your benchmate notices too. He leans over, says something you can't hear, then ruffles the boy's hair roughly, as if to shake loose the last scraps of terror. The young man jerks back, scowls, then manages a weak grin. A moment later, he elbows your benchmate in the ribs, earning a playful curse. There, restored. Even so, the relief is fragile. It hangs over the deck like a thin frost, easily cracked. You sense it in the way men keep darting quick looks upward at the sullen sky, or out across the water, as if expecting another dark wall to rear up at any moment. But for now, the sea simply rolls beneath you, big, indifferent, almost gentle. Someone passes around a battered horn cup with the last dregs of ale, and each man sips from it in turn. Not to get drunk, there's hardly enough left for that, but as a small ritual, a quiet toast to being here. To Thor, the heavy-handed bastard. Your benchmate mutters when it reaches him, lifting it in a lazy salute before drinking. Then he hands it to you with a half smile. When you tip it back, it's warm from so many mouths. A little sour, faintly bitter, but it steadies you. Because this is what keeps men sane out here. Tiny acts of shared survival. A communal breath let out after the storm, saying, yes, we're still here, even if the sea tried her best to make it otherwise. You wipe your mouth, hand the cup on. A gull wheels overhead, scolding the world for reasons only gulls understand. Its cry is almost too bright, too lively, cracking the heavy air with a small bolt of normalcy. And for the first time since the first rumble of thunder, you realize your shoulders have unclenched. You exhale, long and slow. The ship rocks beneath you, a tired old dragon settling its scales. Somewhere up by the prow, Brynjolf has started humming again, and others are answering with low snatches of song that wind between barrels and oars like soft threads pulling the crew back together. It's not joy exactly, more like battered, humble relief. But it's enough. And if the sea wants to come back later to try her luck again, well, she knows where to find you. For now, you're content to lean back against the rail, feel the salt wind in your hair, and exist, soggy, bruised, but unbeaten, under this shy patch of quiet sky. It starts with a shout, not the alarmed, sharp cry that means someone's gone overboard, or the hull's sprung a leak. No, this is something brighter, sharper, vibrating through the salty air like the pluck of a taut string. Fish, fish up. At once, half the ship seems to lurch toward the noise. Men crowd around a pair of sailors near the midship benches who are hauling in a rough net, water streaming from the coarse mesh. It thrashes in their hands, heavy with silver flashes that glitter in the weak daylight. The Longship rocks under the sudden shift of bodies, but no one cares. Everyone wants to see. Outspill half a dozen fat fish, flopping across the deck with wet slaps. One snaps its tail so hard it smacks a sailor's shin, earning a barked curse and a quick stomp that ends the matter. But the rest, oh, they're living treasure, not gold, not jeweled goblets looted from some far monastery, but better, because it's been days of salted flesh and sour mash, days of hard bread and harder cheese, days when your teeth seem to sigh in despair at each new bite. Fresh fish, cool, slick, eyes still bright. There's a buzz of eager chatter. Someone cracks a joke about the sea finally paying rent. Another suggests that if the gods are sending offerings, maybe they're sorry for the storm. Your benchmate elbows you, eyes dancing. Bet you never thought a wriggling pile like that could look more tempting than a king's feast, did you? And truly, it does. Watching them flop is like watching coins scatter across a table, each a promise of tender flesh, the salt of the ocean still clinging sweet on their scales. Quickly, work takes over. Knives come out, small and wickedly sharp. A pair of sailors kneel by a barrel and begin to gut the fish with brisk practice strokes. Blood splashes onto the deck, dark and warm against the old scars in the wood. Gulls circle overhead, screaming with jealousy. There's no time for slow roasting or clever stews. Instead, men slice long, thin strips, lay them across small wooden slats set above iron pans. Someone starts a tiny fire with shavings and coals pulled from a stoppered pot, flickering low, sending up curls of fragrant smoke that makes your mouth water instantly. The first few strips sizzle, curl, grow opaque. Then impossibly, someone passes you a bite. It's still steaming, edges crisp, the middle tender and glistening. You blow on it once, twice, then pop it into your mouth. The taste is a shock. Fresh, rich, a clean sweet note that cuts right through the sour film left by endless ale. It's like tasting sunlight trapped inside silver. You sigh out a little groan without meaning to. Your benchmate catches it, laughs, claps you on the back, hard enough to nearly make you choke. First time you've sounded truly alive this voyage. He's not wrong. Around you, the entire Longship seems to shift. The mood lifts, growing looser, easier. Someone begins a ridiculous little dance, skipping between the benches with a fishtail in hand like a pennant. Another tries to join, nearly trips over an oar, and ends up collapsing in helpless laughter. It spreads. Jokes grow wilder, songs a bit bawdier. Even the old men, who usually sit hunched in their own thoughts, crack grins, showing teeth stained by age and salt. You watch them, warmed by more than just the food, because it strikes you then, with a vivid, almost painful clarity, how fragile these joys are, how easily they tip from gnawing silence into riotous laughter, how close every man is to the edge of hunger or fear, and how precious this stupid, happy moment becomes when snatched from the jaws of an uncaring sea. For now, bellies are full, or at least hopeful, and hands busy. Men lean together to swap favorite ways of cooking fish back home. Though most involve spices or onions, no one's seen since the last port. Someone makes a rude joke about the fish looking prettier than a girl he once bedded in Ribi, which earns a round of theatrical gagging. Through it all, the Longship continues its quiet glide over the water, as if amused by the sudden frolic on its spine. Eventually, the fires die back to embers. Leftover fish goes into a small pot with a splash of ale to simmer into a rough broth. The scraps and guts get flung overboard, sending the gulls into a raucous frenzy that somehow only adds to the lightness of the moment. Your benchmate flops back beside you, hands behind his head, a small satisfied grin curling his lips. Not the feast halls of Valhalla, he sighs, but it'll do. You grin. Your own stomach, for the first time in what feels like forever, doesn't feel like it's trying to eat itself from the inside out. Above, a single brave slice of sun breaks through the clouds, gilding the dragon prow with a shy touch of gold. And you think, just for this breath, that maybe the sea isn't always a greedy witch. Maybe sometimes she can be generous, or at least forgetful enough to let a handful of scruffy mortals have a small, perfect banquet on her back. You lean your head against the rail, close your eyes, and let yourself float right along with it, full, drowsy, and quietly grateful for the miracle of a simple fish. Night again, and colder now. The wind prowls over the deck with sly little teeth, worming beneath cloaks and tunics, nipping at the skin in places you thought safely hidden. It smells of salt and old rain, but also of something faintly sweet, the lingering ghost of fish broth still clinging to beards and cuffs. Men settle into their usual uncomfortable nests. Some curl against barrels or bundles of rope. Others slump with heads tipped back and mouths open to catch stray droplets of mist. The ship rocks beneath them like a tired cradle, sighing under its cargo of stubborn, half-frozen humanity. You wrap your cloak tighter, tucking your hands into the warm hollow between your thighs. But the cold is clever. It finds the gaps, creeps up your wrists, slips down your collar. Your teeth tap together once, twice. Then you pull them tight, determined not to shiver like some delicate lamb. Not that it would matter. Around you, The other men aren't faring much better. Even the ones with the thickest cloaks and hairiest chests grunt and hunch over, sharing body heat by sheer necessity. Somebody sighs. It's a long, soft, lonely sound that carries across the benches. Then another voice answers, low and hesitant. Reckon the barley's coming up by now. You glance over. It's one of the younger rowers, eyes half closed, voice thick with that dazed, dreamy tone men get when they're far away inside their own heads. The grizzled sailor next to him grunts. And your goats have probably eaten half the field already, greedy bastards. A breathy laugh. Aye, maybe, but still, be good to walk it. Feel mud between my toes. Watch crows fight over the scarecrow's hat. Someone else chuckles. When I left, my old woman was grumbling that the roof needed patching. Bet it's leaking on her now. Serves her right for throwing me out last Yule. Serves you right for chasing her sister. Another rasps, and a chorus of soft snorts follows. The first young voice breaks in again. My ma, she'd be putting down turnips for the cellar, singing that stupid song of hers. He makes a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. Couldn't stand it when I was home. Now I'd give my right hand to hear her butcher it again. A hush follows that. Not awkward, just thick like warm wool. Then, gently, an older man with a voice rough as a rasp says, when we get back, God's willing, you'll find her. Make her sing it till your ears rot. The younger man nods, blinking fast. It's a small thing, this sharing, not the rowdy boasts or belly-laughing insults of the day, but quieter, softer, like they're all afraid if they raise their voices too high, these fragile dreams will tear and flutter away on the wind. You breathe it in, the smell of damp wool, sour ale sweat, tar, salt, and realize this is the most intimate these men ever are. Not when they're drinking, not when they're singing filthy ballads, but now, half asleep, half frozen, talking about things they love with voices so low the sea has to lean close to eavesdrop. Your own thoughts drift. A hearth, maybe. Someone waiting there. Or maybe just the idea of someone, hands warm on yours, scolding you for coming home, smelling like fish guts and ship pitch. A grin quirks your mouth before you can stop it. Your benchmate catches it. What's that for? He mutters. Just thinking of home, you say. His grin matches yours, but there's a melancholy edge to it. Aye, stupid thing to miss, isn't it? Drafty roof, nagging wife, cow that kicks the pail over every morning. But I'd trade every silver bit we've ever plundered to see it again. He thumps his head back against the rail. Though don't you dare tell the others I said that. I've a reputation as a cold-hearted bastard to uphold. Your secret's safe, you promise, voice low. And so, the ship rocks on. A cradle, still. Rough, damp, splintery, but a cradle all the same. You listen to the whispers trailing off around you. Stories of barley fields, kitchen fires, babies with soft fat fists grabbing at beards. Even the ones who say nothing at all wear looks that tell you they're miles and miles from this ship, walking paths only they remember. At last, the hush grows heavier, breaths evening out. The sea is gentle now, swaying the Longship with a lazy patience. It almost feels kind, lulling these hard, hungry men into a rare, defenseless sleep. You close your eyes, thinking of turnip songs, leaky roofs, goats trampling fresh shoots, mundane, perfect things. and hope that when the sun finally decides to be brave enough to rise, every man here gets the chance to see them again. Morning, and the sea is wearing its best face, soft, almost playful, with only small, harmless swells rocking the ship like a bored dog wagging its tail. The sky is a patchwork of clouds, but here and there shy pools of blue peek through, as if testing whether it's safe to come out. Then somewhere ahead, a shout cuts through the lazy clatter of oars being shuffled into position, of men clearing their throats and scratching at last night's flea bites. Land. It isn't the first time someone's claimed it. There have been a dozen false alarms along this voyage, usually ending with snorts and curses when a smudge on the horizon turns out to be nothing more than another bruised cluster of cloud. But this time, the shout is different. Sharper, almost reverent. And then others see it too. A dark line stretching along the edge of the world, solid where sea should be soft. Land. The word ripples through the ship like an electric thrill. Even the men who try to hide it, who keep their faces carefully stoic, can't quite keep from straightening, from scanning the horizon with hungry eyes. It's a beautiful kind of ache, because it means the end of this floating prison is somewhere ahead, whether it's the friendly shore of a trading port, a village ripe for raiding, or simply ground that doesn't sway beneath your boots. Your benchmate lets out a breath you didn't know he'd been holding. Ha! Thought the sea might have decided to keep us forever. And he claps your shoulder so hard you nearly bite your tongue. Hope you've been practicing your land legs, Greenling, or you'll tumble off the dock like a drunk chasing a chicken. You grin, though there's a knot in your throat, because truth be told, you're not sure how your legs will feel about standing on something that doesn't rock and groan like a half-sleeping beast. Men are already fussing with their gear, securing belts, checking that knives and axes haven't rusted in their sheaths. One or two slip little charms, bits of carved bone, tiny hammered amulets back around their necks, the way a man smooths his hair before seeing an old lover. All around you, talk blossoms. If the gods favor us, there'll be meat halls fat with grain stores, and farmers fat with daughters, and goats that don't bite, you hairy bastard. Bah, give me a decent stew, sick to death of fish. I want bread with enough butter to drown a rat. There's laughter in it, even if it's brittle. You can hear how close they all are to breaking into full cheers, to weeping if they dared let it show. Because beyond the plunder, or trading, or whatever else waits, there's something more basic, more honest. Land means safety. It means solid ground underfoot, a chance to stretch your legs properly, to sleep without the world heaving beneath you. It means a break from the salt that crusts every crease of your skin, from waking each night, half certain the next wave will toss you into the gods' greedy jaws. As the ship draws nearer, details sharpen, a fringe of dark trees lining the shore, a pale smear that might be a beach, maybe even a wisp of chimney smoke, though that could be wishful thinking. Your heart kicks in your chest like a startled rabbit. Home isn't waiting here, of course. Home is still leagues away, across yet more cold, capricious water. But it doesn't matter. This is land. It might as well be the warm curve of your mother's palm, for all your bones care. Someone starts humming, one of the rowing chants, but it picks up a hopeful edge now, lighter, faster. Before long, it turns into a rough song about landfall, about new silver, about ale that doesn't taste like old socks wrung through seawater. Men join in, boots tapping, shoulders bumping. A couple raise their fists and shout wordless cries that split the air, scaring a knot of gulls off their lazy drifting. Your benchmate shoves his elbow into your ribs. Get ready, Greenling. We'll be sleeping on dirt tonight, if we're lucky, and if not, at least it'll be dirt that doesn't float off under us, like some drunken whore. You snort, but your grin feels foolishly wide. Closer now. The dark line of trees takes shape. The beach stands out clear and pale. You can almost smell it already. Fresh earth, leaves crushed underfoot, wood smoke that isn't tangled with pitch and tar. You close your eyes just for a second. Try to imagine that first step onto steady ground. The way your knees might buckle, the way your lungs will pull in a breath that's sharp with pine instead of brine. And you know, beyond all the raiding, beyond the trading, beyond the proud boasts of how much gold or glory they'll haul home, this is what every man on this ship truly craves, a moment to stand still, feet on unmoving earth, the sea finally behind them. Your eyes open again. The ship still rocks, but it feels different now. Not like a cage, more like the last stretch of road before your tired legs get to rest. Land. And oh, doesn't it look like the kindest promise the world's ever made? The keel slides into the shallows with a scraping sigh that vibrates right up through your boots, up your spine, until your teeth almost chatter from the relief of it. Men surge to their feet, suddenly unable to sit still a second longer. Hands grip the gunwales, eager to leap over the side before the Longship has even fully grounded itself. The prow dips and settles. The ship is still blessedly still. No more swaying, no more sly, stomach-lurching rolls. Just the faint give of wet sand beneath the hull, holding you like a gentle, muddy hand. You stand, nearly fall, because your legs have forgotten what it's like to trust the ground. Everything feels slightly off kilter, as though the world itself is now tilting, instead of the sea. Your benchmate notices your awkward half-stumble, and lets out a short bark of laughter. Ha! Told you, Greenling. Land legs take a minute to remember. Try not to piss yourself in the excitement. Thanks for the concern, you mutter dryly. But truth be told, you're too giddy to be properly offended. The shore stretches before you, a narrow band of pale sand strewn with seaweed and shells. Beyond it, low scrubby bushes lead up to a ragged edge of trees, dark and whispery in the shifting wind. No grand city waits here. No golden temple. Just honest dirt, honest trees, and that's enough to make your chest ache. Men begin jumping overboard, splashing into knee-deep water. Boots sinking into the muck. Some give triumphant whoops that set gulls screeching overhead. A few nearly lose their balance, staggering with arms pinwheeling. But the laughter that follows isn't mocking. It's the wild, exhausted delight of men who have spent far too long under the thumb of the sea. When you finally swing your leg over and drop into the shallows, the cold bites right through your worn boots and up your calves. You suck in a breath that tastes sharp with brine and leaf mold like the world's freshest tonic. The sand shifts under your weight, thick and reluctant, hugging each footstep. You take 3 careful, wading strides. Then you're clear, standing on true solid ground. Your first proper step on the beach sends a jolt up your spine so bright and ridiculous that you almost laugh out loud. Look at me, standing still, not swaying, not bracing for the next wave. Around you, the rest of the crew are reveling in their own goofy, awkward reunions with land. One man actually drops to his knees, runs his hands through the sand, then smears it across his face with a look of bliss that would be downright embarrassing if it weren't so profoundly understandable. Missed that much, did you? Your benchmate calls to him. The kneeling man grins, mouth full of crooked teeth. More than your sister missed me. That earns a round of barking laughter. A few playful shoves. Someone plucks up a handful of pebbles and tosses them at the grinning fool, who only holds his arms out wider, soaking it all in. And just like that, tension unspools. The sea is behind you, at least for a little while, and it feels as though 100 invisible hands have stopped squeezing your ribs. Small, humble rituals begin. Men kneel to rinse their faces in the shallows, scrubbing off the sweat, salt, and whatever stubborn grime still clung from weeks at sea. Others tug off boots and wring out socks, toes flexing in the cool, squishy sand. A few mad or simply joyous, stripped to the waist and wade deeper, dunking themselves completely with triumphant shouts. They come up sputtering and swearing, water sluicing off pale shoulders, but their grins shine so brightly they might as well be kings newly crowned. Even the old hard cases soften. Brynjolf stands with hands on his hips, staring up at the thin drift of smoke that curls from somewhere inland. He doesn't smile. He probably hasn't in years without first losing a tooth, but the lines on his face seem less harsh, the corners of his eyes crinkling as if at some private joke. Your own body revels in tiny luxuries you hadn't known to crave. Solid footing, air that tastes faintly of pine needles and damp leaves, instead of nothing but salt. Even the breeze feels different, less intrusive, almost gentle, threading through your hair instead of trying to tear it out by the roots. Nearby, your benchmate finds a flat rock, plops down on it, and begins unlacing his boots with exaggerated care. Bet you didn't think dry ground could feel like such a damn miracle, eh? You join him, easing onto a drift of sand, still warm from the weak sun. For a moment, you just sit, legs splayed, hands braced behind you, head tilted back to drink in a sky that doesn't seem quite so heavy now. Around you, the men begin to talk of small things. Warm food that doesn't taste like brine, beds that don't rock, maybe even pretty local girls with cheeks still pink from the autumn chill. No one mentions the next voyage yet. That's a shadow for another dawn. For now, they're content to simply be still. And so are you. You wriggle your toes in the sand, feel the earth push back, a gentle grounding promise that after all that tossing and reeling, you're not about to drift off into some watery nowhere. Not today. Today, there's land underfoot, salt drying on your skin, laughter crackling like driftwood flames, and for the first time in far too long, you allow yourself to simply exist without clutching at the world to keep from falling. And gods, doesn't that feel like the richest treasure of all? The beach slowly quiets, not in an empty way, but in that soft, hushed exhale that always comes after a storm of laughter and celebration. The men have scattered into small groups, some working, some simply lying back on the sand with arms folded behind their heads, eyes half closed. You'd think, after weeks crammed together on a longship, sweating, itching, half miserable, these rugged bastards would sprint off to find solitude the instant their feet hit land. But strangely enough, they stick close, closer than you'd expect. Maybe it's habit, or maybe it's that strange, grudging affection born from surviving something together, an affection tough as old rope and just as tangled. Small fires spring up along the edge of the beach, modest things ringed by stones, fed with driftwood and dry twigs scavenged from the scraggly tree line. Smoke twirls up in thin blue fingers, chased by the same restless breeze that teases cloaks and rattles the last droplets from your hair. At one of these fires, a pair of sailors crouch over a battered pot, stirring what looks suspiciously like the leftover fish scraps simmered in brine. It smells marginally better than what you've been eating on the ship. Maybe it's the promise of steady ground that makes everything seem richer. Nearby, your benchmate has found a flat patch of sand and is lying spread-eagled, boots off, wiggling his toes at the open sky. Feels like the first time I've drawn a full breath in weeks, he sighs. You drop down next to him. The sand shifts under your weight, warm on the surface, but cool underneath. For a moment, you both just sit like that, savoring the simple miracle of not having to brace your knees against the rolling of the world. Someone a few paces off starts humming a low, wandering tune. It catches in the air, fragile, uncertain, until another voice picks it up, then another. Before long, there's a thin, rough chorus drifting among the fires. It's not the raucous battle songs they bellow before a raid, not the cheeky drinking chants about goats and innkeepers' daughters. This is something simpler. An old home tune, half prayer, half lullaby, carrying images of warm thatch, apple trees, children running through fields. It strokes something tender inside your chest, a place you hadn't realized was still bruised from all the long nights clutching the rail. Your benchmate must feel it too. He nudges you with his heel, not looking over, voice soft. Funny, isn't it? Spend half our lives running off to sea, chasing silver, telling ourselves we're hard as old nails, and the first chance we get, we're singing songs about hearth fires and harvest feasts like a pack of homesick milkmaids. You grin, eyes on the dancing flames. Maybe because silver's cold, hard to cuddle up with a pile of coins. He barks a quiet laugh at that. Aye, true enough. Silence settles again, but it's companionable. Over by the nearest fire, Brynjolf sits cross-legged, carefully oiling the blade of his axe. It's almost a reverent act, each swipe of the cloth deliberate, not because he's spoiling for a fight, though that might come tomorrow, but because after so long trusting your life to your comrades, your oar, your gods, it's comforting to tend something solid and sharp in your own hands. A couple of younger men sit shoulder to shoulder, heads bent close, whispering. Now and then, one lets out a quick snort of laughter, elbowing the other. Could be planning mischief. Could be daydreaming about finding soft beds and softer company in some nearby village. Whatever it is, it's theirs alone, a little bubble of youthful idiocy that you can't help but envy. Above, the clouds part, just enough to show a scatter of stars, shy and pale. The moon peeks out too, wearing a smug grin that seems to say, "See, I didn't forget about you after all." You draw in a deep breath. The air is layered with smoke and salt, with the faint green tang of crushed leaves, with the not quite unpleasant funk of men who've only just begun to shed the reek of weeks on the water. And beneath it all is the gentle crackle of fire, the low murmur of familiar voices, the shared relief that for tonight at least, the sea isn't clawing at your backs. Your benchmate sighs again. Reckon tomorrow we'll be off chasing pigs or looking for trade, maybe knocking down a few doors if the locals are cross. Probably, you agree. He tips his head back, studies the stars, but for tonight, feels enough just to sit, with warm toes and nothing rocking under my arse. A rare kind of treasure, you say, half teasing, half honest. He snorts, then nods. Aye, and the only sort that won't get you stabbed by your own shipmate come morning. You both chuckle at that, letting it fade into the soft hum of the beach. Fires popping, someone snoring already, the distant hush of small waves lapping against the Longship still pulled up on the sand. And for all the cold ground, the itchy cloak, the uncertain dawn, waiting beyond this one fragile night, your heart settles. Because here, with these rough, half-broken, laughter-cracked men, you're strangely, stupidly safe, if only for a little while. The morning after feels like waking from a long, tangled dream. The fires have died down to faint gray ghosts, sending up wisps of smoke that curl around your ankles and vanish into the clearer sky. Dew clings to everything. Cloaks, boots, the rough boards of the Longship still pulled half up on the sand. It slicks the edges of your beard and cools your eyelids with every blink. Around you, the crew stirs in slow fits and starts. No sharp commands today. No scramble to man the oars or brace against a sudden squall. Just the low murmur of men waking by degrees, stretching stiff backs, rubbing bleary eyes. Some rise only to flop onto new patches of sand, curling back into sleep with soft groans of satisfaction. Your own body feels heavy, deliciously so, like someone's draped it in warm stones. Every limb is reluctant to obey your brain's half-hearted orders to move. And why should it? There's nothing chasing you now. No rolling deck to demand you clutch at the nearest rail. No hungry wind tearing at your ears. You close your eyes again. The air tastes impossibly sweet, tinged with wood ash, salt, and a faint green freshness that might be crushed leaves or the promise of some small meadow beyond the trees. It's so gentle you almost want to swallow it whole, let it fill every hollow in your ribs. Nearby, your benchmate lies sprawled on his back, mouth open, snoring, with a kind of sleepy grandeur that only a man utterly at peace can manage. One hand rests on his belly, rising and falling in a steady rhythm that might be mistaken for a lullaby if you weren't in on the joke. Others nestle together like puppies, boots tangled, heads sharing the same bundled cloak. Someone mumbles in his sleep, words too slurred to catch, but soft, tender. Maybe it's a lover's name, or the memory of a field back home, where the sun set like melted gold behind a crooked fence. You shift slightly, nestle deeper into the sand. It shapes itself to you, cool and yielding, grounding you in a way no ship's planks ever could. Above, gulls wheel lazily, their cries distant, content to chase each other rather than steal from your scant supplies. Time seems to slip sideways. The Longship sits quiet, its dragon prow no longer fierce, but oddly gentle, as if even carved monsters need to rest. Waves lap against its hull in tiny, soothing sighs. The world has grown small and tender, just you, your weary brothers, and a stretch of empty beach that holds your secrets like a mother pressing a child to her chest. You close your eyes once more, not to block anything out, but to let it all in. The hush of the sea, the soft breathing of sleeping men, the brush of air across your cheek like careful fingers. And it strikes you so gently, it almost doesn't hurt, that this might be the truest kind of wealth. Not silver coins, not gaudy bracelets or church goblets looted from far coasts, but this shared quiet, this unguarded trust, this simple belonging under a sky wide enough to cradle all your private aches and half-forgotten joys. So you drift there, on the edge of sleep, body slack with the good ache of living. Let it hold you. Let the sand support the curve of your spine. Let the breath of your shipmates fill the air around you like a blanket. Let the sea keep whispering its secret lullabies. Take one slow, deep breath. Feel it fill your chest, stretch your ribs, pause there for just a heartbeat, then slip out again, carrying the last scraps of worry with it. Do it again, even slower this time. And as you exhale, imagine your weight sinking deeper into the earth. Imagine your thoughts growing soft and heavy, floating out over the calm water to chase the rising sun. You're safe here. You've earned this rest. Let yourself drift, easy and unhurried, into the gentle dark waiting just behind your closed eyes. You're already halfway to dreaming. Go ahead, fall the rest of the way.